Hello everyone, I'm Magdalene from ITIS Capital. I hope you all are doing well. I thank you for taking time to be on the call today, and I wish you the best of health during the lockdown. I welcome you all to our first quarter investor call 2020. So today, our focus will be on the recent performance of the portfolio and an update in the market. With that, it's now my pleasure to turn the call over to Naveen Chandra Mohan, our CEO and Principal of ITIS Capital. Over to Naveen.
Thanks, Magdalene, for the kind introduction. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for taking the time out to attend our call, and I wish everyone the best of health as we navigate through these tough times together. Through the course of the call, I will walk you through our fund performance, how we are positioned today in our portfolio, our read of the economy, and macroeconomic implications on the ground as to how we believe investors need to position their portfolios for tomorrow. We ended 2019 on a strong note, outperforming the Nifty by 6.5% and the mid cap and the small cap indices by over 20%. If you recall, this was during a year where most funds underperformed their benchmarks. Looking at our performance at the end of March 2020, post the sell-off in the markets, while we had a negative return of 19.03% this year from Jan to March, our outperformance against the index continues to stand out. As of March 2020, ITIS has generated a return of 10.1% CAGR annualized over a 3.25-year period versus a 0.9% return for the Nifty. Put another way, 1 rupee invested in the fund would be worth 1.36 rupees today as against 1.03 on the Nifty over the same period. Most of the mid cap and the small cap indices during the same period have had an erosion in capital. If I look at the current fund snapshot and talk you through the portfolio at a very high level, we are grateful to our clients who've been adding money with us during the fall, and the new clients who've joined us as a part of our family. Our portfolio continues to have a multi-cap focus to it, and the largest exposure that we have is with HDFC Bank. We are invested across 16 securities as of today, and our average churn rate over the last 3 years stands at 16.5%. Over the next section, I'll talk you through our current portfolio construction and how our portfolio is positioned today. If I were to drill down into the portfolio at greater depth, the businesses that we own have 3 common characteristics. They are all market leaders in their respective segments. They continue to show consistent free cash flow growth, and they have very minimal or no debt on their balance sheet. This effectively has translated into 3 themes as we own it today. The weightage towards private sector banks, as I believe, they will continue to benefit from the banking sector stress that we are in the midst of as we speak. We have consumer-focused businesses on the portfolio where I believe we're not overpaying to own them. And we also have select exposure in niche pharma plays. If I was to summarize the activity in the quarter, as you would imagine, or for people who are attending our call regularly, our churn rate is low. Our activity in any quarter is generally minimal. However, we reduced our exposure in Delta and Sun TV in the month of Jan 2020, as there were initial signs of COVID coming from the global economy. Delta Corp as a business may have had direct impact on its operations back then in Jan 2020 if the situation had spread into India, and that's exactly what happened. With the benefit of hindsight, this gave us some room to position with additional cash during the sell-off in March to increase our exposure in HDFC Bank and add HDFC Life into the portfolio. Both of these securities are structural investments the way we see it today, which will continue to be beneficiaries as things normalize in the economy. As we continue to be in front of clients and spend most of our time with investors, there are a few common questions that we get asked during our conversations. Over the next 5 minutes, I would look to address each of this. I would, over the next 5 to 10 minutes, talk about what is happening on the ground in the economy, which should address the next 4 questions. A predominant question that we often get asked is, are you overweight financials in the market as we speak? Now, in a market like India, the word financials effectively is a very, very broad sector. I would like to drill down these financials into a few more subsectors that are of relevance in the market. The way I see it, they would be subdivided into private sector banks, where our exposure is predominantly overweighted in NBFCs, where we have absolutely zero exposure. As I have maintained from the beginning in the inception of the fund, we've not had any exposure in NBFCs, and that continues to be the state of affairs today. PSUs, public sector banks, again, where we actually have absolutely no exposure. And finally, insurance and AMCs, where we have select exposures through the HDFC basket. So while I continue to believe that private sector banks are going to be beneficiaries in the economy, and that's where we are overweight, I don't see ourselves looking at adding exposure in NBFCs or public sector banks, both in the near or medium term, around our portfolio positioning. There have been certain core aspects of our philosophy around which we have defined our investment process, and this has helped us both during good and bad times. This is naturally translated into how we think about our portfolio during any point of time. Today, as we stand, we do not want exposure in any cyclical business or leverage balance sheets. Today, every investment that we evaluate, we are looking for businesses who can survive. And this definition of survive is done by the free cash flows that they generate or the cash that they already have on their balance sheet. Growth is more of a follow-on concept. That's a consequence that I believe should follow through when the economy normalizes. Here again, we've been very disciplined not to invest in capex-heavy businesses which have a poor history of generating consistent return on capital over time. Considering that we are in the midst of a bear market, it makes sense, I believe, to evaluate the history of bear markets and how they've been defined over time. This graph, again, the study done by Goldman Sachs Investment Research, goes back to the history of bear markets in the US, considering that the history in the US is a lot more deep and defined than in India, studying the bear markets over the last 120 years. There are three definitions of bear markets in which how they've arrived: structural, cyclical, or event-driven. And it would be safe to assume that today's bear market that we are faced globally is more of an event-driven one. A structural one generally comes as a result of financial distress or leverage. Now, today, there is a theoretical possibility of an event-driven bear market translating into a structural one, specifically with regard to what we are faced because of the supply chain shutdown globally. However, if we believe that we are truly in the midst of an event-driven bear market, these have been the shortest in duration and the fastest to recover. Typically 5 to 6 months in duration and another 5 months to recover, with an average market decline of 30%. Now, this is not to preclude the fact that this is an event-driven one and we are in the middle of a recovery, but this is just to provide context to the history of bear markets for what it's worth. Now, talking about COVID and the actual situation on the ground, I'm clearly not qualified enough to comment on the COVID from a health perspective. Hence, I'm taking the help of people who study this for their livelihood. The chart that I have shown here is from Shamika Ravi of Brookings, who was the ex-advisor to our Prime Minister. If you look at India specifically, March 21 was the date where we had 300 plus cases. And today, like countries all over the world, what people are looking at is not just the absolute number of cases, but the flattening of the curve. But what we're saying is basically, if you reduce the growth rate as time passes, measuring it by how long it takes for the number of cases to double, we are flatlining the curve over time. Now, if the graph basically shows what would have happened if we had not gone through a shutdown or a lockdown as we have in India today. We were looking at cases doubling every 3 days pre the shutdown, which effectively means the number of cases India would have expected would be around 1,06,436 as against, which is around 764% higher than where we are today. There was a minor blip in this, primarily because of the religious congregation that happened between March 13th to 15th. But again, we've managed to kind of proxy flatline the curve over time, from cases doubling every 3 days to where we are today, where cases are doubling every 5 days. Uh, uh, Through the end of this lockdown, the main aim of the government, as this data and the chart projects, is for the cases to actually double every 7 to 8 days, which means we are truly flatlining the curve. Here again, the chart that I have presented is from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the US. This talks about the correlation of fatalities to age. Effectively, while we are in a lockdown, one has to look at what next post April 30th. I mean, there are two possibilities. One is to continue to extend the lockdown, or to basically selectively say that the economy can restart selectively. But how do you define selectively? Is there a probability correlation between fatality and the age, which this chart clearly presents there is, where as the age increases, basically above 55, the probability of fatality is a lot higher versus versus a country like India, where you have a huge number of population who are in their 30s and 40s and early 50s. So the question to be asking at the moment is, can we look at industry starting based on this from a very selective perspective? In such a case, there is a case to be made for the youth to kickstart the work and socially distance themselves from the senior citizens. Now, the hard aspect, if you're a skeptic in a country like India, this is very practically difficult to achieve because many of the families, couples still continue to stay with their parents. And this, however, is a path that is under serious consideration from most governments. Finally, pool testing as a concept has been given a regulatory go-ahead, and it's happening at the moment, where we are now testing for pool samples as against individual samples because we don't have so many sample test kits. And this gives us the ability to test a wider sample faster. So effectively, what all of this means is we are on the right track. There is a potential for the economy to start selectively. However, what this means in the future is yet to be seen. So while the case for an economic and a structural lockdown as we see it today is easy to superimpose and extend, it need not be that we are in an environment of gloom and doom. Now, while we deal with all of this uncertainty, one thing is certainly clear, that this kind of a scenario needs help from a systematic government across the world. We've already seen governments both in US and Europe continue to support the economy both from a monetary and printing more money alongside. However, when there is fear, all of this can only help to an extent, and that's what is happening today on the ground. In India, the government has taken multiple actions through its own version of LTRO and cutting rates. My own belief is that the LTRO announced by the government would have been better achieved if they could have bought direct corporate bonds from the RBI's balance sheet rather than doing it from the bank's balance sheet. Because I personally feel banks have to take care of themselves in this market, and the transmission mechanism would be poor when done through the latter. However, that's what the RBI has chosen to do it as we speak. Moreover, while there have been multiple economists and people on the ground proposing additional printing of money, I believe this decision is not so straightforward for the RBI. We are currently, from a rating perspective, borderline investment grade as a sovereign. And today we cannot afford to get downgraded one notch to junk, as that will have a significant impact on the books of FIs holding Indian Treasury and Indian bonds. So clearly, the RBI has had a reactive approach this far. They have taken definitive measures, but it's certainly clear that they need to be doing more for economic activity to kickstart on the ground. And this is, in my belief, a matter of time. All of this lends itself to my final thoughts on the market. If I had spoken to investors 4 months back, a common thesis or a conversation would have resulted in we always want lower prices to invest. Remember, when you get these lower prices, you need to understand that those are situations that are never comfortable. It is always because of either fear or it's of discomfort. Second, the world is never doom and gloom. Neither is it as rosy a place as people make it to be during the middle of a roaring bull market. Neither is it all gloom and doom in the middle of absolutely bear market that we are in the middle of today. Fear in general is easier to spread. Always remember that. While there is no doubt that we are living in uncertain times, humans as a race have always created progress, and that's predominantly the reason we've managed to come out of a crisis. So my belief is that we will come out of this too. It's a question of time. However, it's not a question of all gloom and doom as people make it to be. Remember, what you are trying to do at a portfolio level and what ITIS is looking at doing at a portfolio level is to buy strong companies who have innovated in the past, who have faced a crisis before. And generally, there are two things that have helped good companies come out of a crisis. Apart from talented people, it's a question of the cash that you conserve and you have on the balance sheet, and a strong balance sheet in the form of very low debt. So it's never about buying the index, but about buying strong companies. So the conversation of around have we made a low or where the index is going from here generally doesn't matter beyond a point, because it's about the company and the business fundamentals that is going to drive long-term wealth creation. Finally, our portfolio continues to do well. So we have been adding money into the portfolio because of clients coming and adding both from an existing as well as an ongoing perspective. So the structure of the portfolio is as defined in the chart. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So I've tried to answer most of the questions that have actually come up during the call, as well as those that came up during the investor calls that we've had both on a one-on-one as well as a one-to-many basis in the past. The only question that is repeating at the moment is, have we made a low? The honest answer is I don't know. And because the way we look at it from a portfolio level, we are looking at buying good businesses when they are available at a discount. Today, if I look at HDFC Bank, 3 months back, if anyone had told me I would get HDFC Bank at a 40% price than where it was trading 3 months earlier, most people would have laughed. And today you are getting that. So the question that one needs to answer is, are you going to be investing today, or are you going to be waiting for a 30% downside, which may or may not happen? So rather than looking at it from the point of view of whether we made a low or not, I think a systematic approach towards investing in good quality companies would make better sense, because investments during times of uncertainty have generally paid off from a duration of 12 to 24 months and towards a long-term period from there. I guess at the moment we've answered most of the questions that have come our way. Thank you so much, and over to you, Maggie.
Thank you, Naveen, for that update. So any investor has any questions, can feel free to type out your questions to us. Thank you once again. Have a nice time and stay safe.